Hi, my name is Carolyn Klaube and I'm the Stewardship Director for the Ireland Conservancy. I want to talk to you about stewardship. So, ecological stewardship is the active participation in caring for the land to benefit our local ecosystem. And a steward shop is a workshop about stewardship, and generally steward shops take place at somebody's home and the work that they're doing at their home to benefit the local ecosystem. This year, we really want to focus on Ireland Conservancy members that are taking active steps to reduce their lawn and replace their lawn with native herbaceous and woody plants that will benefit their local ecosystem. Some of these members went whole hog in and they fenced in a huge area of land and they did a really big restoration project on their property. Other members have done it in smaller bites, little bit by little bit, taking up the lawn and planting in natives. We really want to encourage everyone to be part of this stewardship initiative. Everybody can make a difference. So please join us in learning about how to reduce your lawn, planting native plants, and saving the Irelands. Hey, so I'm inviting you to come check out my yard and what I've been doing here to reduce my lawn. When we moved in, the whole front yard was just grass. The previous owner did have a little garden over there on the other side of our walkway, and it had a couple of heathers, some hydrangeas, and rhododendrons, but that was about it. Otherwise, it was all grass. And so we started small. Our first foray into reducing our lawn was just adding a little native plant garden on the side of our walkway. And then we got the bug and we just started building from there. And if you look around, you can see that all of the grass is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking by building out these native plant beds. And we're doing it in small strips at a time. We did that strip over there, and then we did a strip in the front of this fence, and then we built the fence, and then we did another strip on the back side, and then we put another strip to make a new walkway coming into the front of our house. And our goal is actually to get rid of all of the grass in our front yard and turn it into all just native plants. Out here we get a lot of sun, so sun-loving plants, and then under our big oaks we're going to have some shady plants. But we're doing it little by little by little and defining our space as we go along. So I'm excited to have you here and for you to check out my backyard too. We've been doing the same thing, little by little, defining different spaces, reclaiming areas from invasive species, creating little nooks for us to get in and enjoy watching pollinators doing their thing on their plants. Or taking spaces that we're not really using in our backyard and turning it into a habitat. So come join us and check out my yard. So in my backyard, when we moved here, it was all grass. There was a little garden over here. It was maybe 3 feet wide by 15 feet long, and it was just rose bushes and peonies. And then this whole backyard was open, and then there was a flower garden in the back. But other than that, it was just grass. And it started with this garden here. And the idea behind this garden was that my husband and my oldest son built me a hammock stand. And in this big backyard, there was no place that I felt like I could just relax and look at nature. Even though there's nature all around, I really wanted to see butterflies and bees and listen to the sounds of birds foraging. So we created this little nook here. None of this was here, and so we made a little bit of a rain garden here. There's blue lobelia and cardinal flower. There's some blazing star also and wild bergamot growing, but there's a downspout from our roof, and so it gets really, really wet right in this front area. So we planted some wet plants here. And then we made this little nook. And there was no real layout for it as far as what plants we put in. We just wanted to make sure we had things that were blooming all the time. So when you come into this area, there's spiderwort, was one of the first things to bloom, and then we had our red bee balm, or scarlet bee balm, and now our wild bergamot and echinacea and coreopsis is blooming. Next to come into the show is our joe pye weed, and our cardinal flowers are going to bloom. And the thing that I really love about this area is that it's just peaceful. Even though it doesn't seem so different than everywhere else, it just created this little space for me to sit in. And so we have chairs out there that sometimes my husband and I sit and have our coffee in the morning and watch the bees and butterflies. And it's just a little quiet spot in the backyard when all the kids are running around. So a lot of the plants here, or all the plants here, when I bought them last year, everything here I bought last year, were really small. So this joe pye weed that's over my head, and I bought it from Wild Ridge last year, it was about this big. And the full height last year was about maybe hip height. Same thing with the echinacea, and the wild bergamot, and the scarlet bee balm. Everything last year was really small. And so this garden last year was still beautiful, but it was small. And the saying goes with plants, the first year they sleep, then they creep, and then they leap. So a lot of the plants here last year were sort of in their sleep creep stage. They were on the smaller side, and now that they're established, they're leaping, and they're really going for it and getting really, really tall and beautiful. But buying plants, especially perennial plants, which is the only thing that I've been planting, can be expensive. And so some of the ways that I try to save on costs is if I ever went to a big box store or anything like that, they had their reduced plant section. And a lot of those plants were just really dehydrated. But then they're selling them for $1. So I took them home, and even though they're not straight varieties like the red echinacea, pollinators still love them. So I have a mix of the native Echinacea purpurea, the purple coneflower. But you know, they're still doing good things, still providing nectar. So it was another way that was not that expensive to be able to get some of these plants in. I've also bought a lot of plants in the plug size, and so Pinelands Direct, you can buy lots of plants in their plug and tubeling sizes. So they're only about $2-3 a piece, which makes it a lot easier to get a lot of biodiversity. And that's something that I was really looking for in my backyard, was having a lot of different species. And that's really important for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is a lot of insects have obligate relationships with certain plants. So one of those is monarchs and milkweed. But you know, there's a lot of other species of butterflies and moths, and they all have different relationships with their host plant. So if you really want to support pollinators and insects throughout their entire life cycle, you have to have a lot of different types of plants out here. And also with biodiversity, you're going to have different things blooming at different times. So there's always a food source for your insects and your birds coming through. So especially later on in the summer, I get a lot of goldfinches that come and they eat from the sunflowers, and all winter long I had birds eating the seeds from the echinacea. So, you know, when you're thinking about your backyard or your front yard or wherever you're going to reduce your lawn, just keeping in mind that you want to try to have a lot of different things going on, so you have that constant food supply. And here it's, as Andrew said, controlled chaos. There's lots of things going on. I did not have a specific plant design in mind. It was just I wanted to create a space that I could come and watch pollinators, and I have little fledgling birds that sometimes are in here and they're popping around. and their parents are bringing them caterpillars, and it's really fun to watch. So, you know, trying to bring this into your own yard, you don't necessarily have to have the perfect layout. You can start small, and that's something that we've done here, is just the small creep, or the slow creep, where we create a little bit of a garden bed. This original garden bed was only about 3 feet wide, and this year we've added an additional 4 feet, and we'll take a look on the other side in just a minute. But you don't have to do it all at once. I don't have a lot of time to do it all at once, and a lot of people don't have a lot of time to do it all at once. And sometimes you do have the opportunity to do it all at once. It just really depends on what your life stage is and what's going on. But for us, that, you know, going at it little by little by little did the trick. So this is this year's slow creep. And so we added about 4 feet of garden on this side. So over there, where you see the bergamot and the Scarlet Bee balm, that was what we planted last year. But last year, it looked like this. There's a lot of small plants. Some of them are a little bit bigger than what I have here, but, you know, it takes time. And the things that are growing on this side now are things that I grew from seed versus on that side were plants that I bought. And so, you know, you can't necessarily put a plant in the ground and expect it to be perfect right away, especially that year. It takes time for plants to adjust to being transplanted. And sometimes, frankly, they don't like where you put them. There's been quite a few times that I've moved plants. I had up there, there was a beautiful purple flowering raspberry, and when I first got it, I put it in my front yard. I thought it was the best spot, and it really struggled. It really didn't like being there, and after about 2 months, it was looking almost on the brink of death. So I dug it up and I moved it over here, and now it's, you know, almost this chest high. It really loved where I moved it to. So, and I've moved some other plants before, and I'm gonna move my beach plums that I have in here. Shame on me for not knowing their growth habit, and I put them in a spot that, you know, they're doing okay. They've grown quite a bit. Last year they were all about this tall, and now they're all about 4 feet tall, but the way everything's growing in around them, they might not have enough light, so I'm gonna move them somewhere else. And I think that's something that I really want folks to realize, that, you know, watch your plants. If they look really unhappy, maybe change where they are. Maybe they have too much sun or too little sun or not enough water. And so, you know, plants are living creatures. Same as your pet dog or your cat. They're living creatures, and they need things. And sometimes we have in our mind what we want their habitat to be in our garden, and sometimes that's not what they want. So just be mindful and don't be afraid to move them. There are certain times of year that are better to move plants than others, but, you know, when you're out communing with your garden and with your plants, just pay attention to what's going on with them and realize you might not know best of what they want, and I certainly don't always know best. So don't be afraid to change things up and move them somewhere else. So this is another area of slow creep for us. This area of our backyard was completely overrun with English ivy, and it also flooded a lot. And, you know, we really want to make it into a more ecologically usable space. Just like everybody else, we have invasives all over the place, and it can be really overwhelming trying to tackle all of it at once. So we reclaimed a spot. So this is our spot that we said no English ivy right here. And so we took shovels and we dug out a depression here. It's only about 1.5 feet deep, this little pond. We put a liner and we put a note out on Facebook asking people if they had any landscaping rocks they didn't want, and people sure did. So we went and we collected them, and we filled in the liner with rocks, and we got a solar water fountain, and we just put in some native plants in the back. We did spring ephemerals, because a lot of times with all the garden plants that you can buy easily, or perennial native plants you can buy easily, a lot of them are midsummer or late summer bloomers, but you need something for those early pollinators that are waking up. So, you know, we pushed back the English ivy, we pulled it up, we put down thick layers of brown paper bags and cardboard, and then put lots of wood chips on them. We got our wood chips from a local tree company. We just said, hey, can you dump wood chips on our driveway, and they did. And so we just reclaim the space in a small way. We still have lots of English ivy that we're going to be dealing with over time, but you know, when you're thinking about stewarding your land, you don't have to do it all at once. You can take little areas and say, you know what, this is my space, and I'm going to create, you know, whatever type of habitat that I want, or I just don't want to have English ivy overrunning everything here. So again, taking little bites and breaking down big problems into smaller steps, and being patient, that it's going to take time. And doing a little bit often usually has a really great result, rather than just going all at once. At least for me, I get overwhelmed and then I might just shut off, versus if I just hack away at it little by little, you can wind up turning a soggy English ivy pit into a little pond where the birds come and they take baths there. The tree frogs go nuts every night, and they didn't used to do that. So again, take your big problem, make it into attainable bites, and just work on it little bit by little bit.